Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I've got a special video today for you. It is a phase 2 to phase 4 solo of the Forbidden Depths raid. This team was not my invention. Credit and shout out to Sickfool who perfected this, came up with it, and it's essentially a slight variation to the team that I showed you in my last video, the one that's able to solo phase 2 to phase 4, and that team is featuring Baymax. This team is actually featuring Sergeant Calhoun in place of Baymax in that front middle spot. The reason we're using Sergeant Calhoun here is because she is able to summon a beacon of light with taunt, and that beacon is able to reapply taunt to itself on every turn. Every time it takes a turn, it's going to be able to reapply that taunt, so you can effectively have a permanent taunt. And this is the reason why you're able to solo it. You're effectively going to be able to prevent the Eels and Ursula from ever insta-killing you. So the initial setup of this team is actually by far the hardest part. The RNG in the beginning with these Eels can really mess up the run. I only have a G7 Calhoun. She's quite squishy. If Jetsam or Floatsam target her, she's going to go down quite easily. So you need to get a little bit lucky with the RNG. And what you're going to do is you're going to get Calhoun to put that beacon down as soon as possible. And then you're going to want to put evades on that beacon. Now, the only variation, as I mentioned, in this team is the fact you're using Calhoun, so it means everything else is consistent. So you're going to have Bubbles, Honey Lemon, Sven, and Hero doing the exact same thing as they did in the previous raid, and you're also going to be using the same spells. Now, the spells in this run are super important to get out early. You need the Cauldron as fast as possible because the Cauldron's going to be giving that magic back to the likes of Hero and Bubbles. In this run, you really want it to go to Hero because he's going to be able to keep putting up evades, and I'll explain why the evades are super important in a minute. The other spell you're going to need is Shadow, and you're going to need to get this out ASAP. In my last video it didn't matter so much, but in this video it is really important. If you can't get that Shadow out quickly and effectively, and what I mean by effectively is you need to be able to put down a Shadow that has an evade on it so that Jetsam and Floatsam won't target it. But anyway, you need to get that out as soon as possible, and to then start stacking the evades on it with Hero. Now, the difficulty in getting this run to work actually stems from Hero being able to stack evades on the beacon, because what you're going to want to do with your shadows, you're going to want to shadow the beacon, right? You're not going to want to shadow the Cauldron, you're not going to want to shadow Sven, you're going to want to shadow this beacon, because your beacon that you actually summon with Calhoun is going to constantly have taunt, and it's going to constantly be taking damage. And with that, it's going to be losing the evades. The problem here is that Jetsam can purge, and he can purge the taunt. So if you get to a situation where Jetsam and Floatsam have their insta-kill ready, if they purge the taunt, if Jetsam purges that taunt, Floatsam is going to be able to do his insta-kill on his next move, and your run is pretty much over. So it's really important to have a lot of this stuff lined up. You want to effectively be able to put down the additional Shadow on the beacon when it has an evade. Firstly, to prevent it from being attacked by Jetsam and Floatsam, because it has a lot less health than the other beacon. And secondly, because in the event the other beacon dies like it does in this video, then you've got another beacon that can keep reapplying taunt on every turn, basically have a permanent taunt, and then Floatsam and Jetsam can never insta-kill. So that's what you want to do here. You effectively want to put down the beacon as soon as possible, shadow that beacon with an evade, and then, you know, your run is almost exactly the same as what you would do in my previous video. The strategy is the same. You're going to scan the Cauldron with Hero to give magic. You need that magic to keep giving Hero his abilities. You're going to want to put up evades as much as possible with Hero, and generally use that option over any other when it's available. If you don't, you run the risk of not stacking enough evades on your beacons, so that when Jetsam comes to purge, he's going to potentially purge them all, and you know your insta kills coming up, and then there's nothing you can do about the run. So yeah, so scan the cauldron with hero. With bubbles, same tactic. You're gonna pass the ticket to Sven, only Sven. You're also gonna do stare down. Now with stare down, in general, I focus down on Jetsam here. Jetsam is the main threat because of the fact he can purge. So you want him to take as few turns as possible. It's okay for Floatsam to go, because although he can charming the beacon doesn't do anything. It doesn't attack, it just reapplies taunt to itself every time. So it matters very little whether it gets charmed or not. So in general, yeah, you want to use stare down from bubbles on Jetsam and focus most of the direction of your attack on Floatsam. Every now and then you might want to reduce turn meter on Floatsam, but he's much less of a threat than Jetsam. Honey Lemon is there just to use her basic attack on both eels to keep applying the slow, and Sven is just going to eat carrots again. He's going to assist randomly, and that's going to do your damage. It's really important to just eat carrots with Sven because phase 3 can be a little bit dicey with Sven if you don't go in with enough stacks of his crits. The final thing to note is that the beacon that you put down, that you summon with Calhoun, is going to get attacked a lot. Now you can do this where that beacon survives. In my run it unfortunately doesn't survive, which got me a little scared at the time, but with Hero constantly putting up micro barriers, he's going to actually generate shield, giving shield to those shadow beacons, so those beacons can actually withstand the damage from the eels. What's going to happen with the damage to the beacons is it's going to generate another shadow. Now for safety, I would recommend shadowing the beacon again. You want to shadow your shadow of the beacon, because that's going to be the one with more evades. Once you've got 2 shadowed beacons, the run becomes very, very easy, and you know it's no different really to what you're doing in any of your normal runs. One thing I really should mention is if you happen to use Calhoun's Beacon of Light ability again, that will remove the shadows that you've got down, so you really have to just make do with what you've got. So that's the general strategy of this video. I'm now just going to fast forward until phase 3, and you know we'll reconvene there. Now once Sven has passively assisted and you've made your way into phase 3, you're going to get given a contract. Now this is where your run can end, unfortunately. I've had it on 2 occasions where I got the 30% health contract. Now I find it really difficult to not lose health in the beginning of this raid because Jet's Hammer and Float's Hammer give you quite a bit of damage, Calhoun is quite squishy, and you're not able to heal. The beauty of having Baymax is, you know, mass impact heals and also his patient heals, so you're going to be able to go into phase 3 without losing a lot of health. If you get the instant death contract, you know, the less than 30% health, effectively your run might be over, but there's only a percentage chance that you'll get that contract. Luckily enough here I didn't get that one, and so I managed to make it into phase 3 cleanly. Now phase 3 is effectively a race against the clock. You are just going to want to get as much damage out on Ursula as possible. The reason being is that Ursula really hits hard in this phase, so if you try to put the beacon out and, you know, shadow the beacon, do all that nice stuff, the likelihood is you're not going to be able to withstand the damage and, you know, get up enough evades and shield on that beacon, so you'll never be able to have a permanent taunt in this phase. So what I do here is control Ursula with bubbles, stare down, but the main thing is I'm just going to scan Sven and do as much damage with Sven as possible. And I also drop the shadow here. I was trying to decide whether I'd need to or not, but you know, Ursula has a lot of speed in this phase. Your race against the clock is to race against her being able to have that insta-kill ability up. So it's just super important that you get enough damage out. You're not going to get hit by Ursula. She is going to silence Sven, but he's in the spot where it doesn't. She is going to silence Sven, but it doesn't really matter at this point because you're just going to want to do damage with him. You know, I did find myself a little bit lucky in this. I nearly didn't make it through, and that's because I think in the beginning I didn't put down the shadow straight away. I was a bit hesitant because I thought I could probably take it into the next phase. If you lose a character here, it's just gonna make the next phase extremely difficult, and it might not even work. So, but anyway, that's phase 3. Unfortunately, we made it through, and then you're into the last phase. And at this point, you know, this phase isn't that difficult, and Ursula is quite a bit slower than, you know, the raid bosses in the other phases. So you are actually able to control Ursula and prevent the insta-kill by putting down the beacon. Now the strategy here is you're going to focus down the tentacles whenever they're up. You're going to use, as I say, you're going to use Honey Lemon Basic. It's no different to previous phases. You're going to use Honey Lemon Basic, Bubble Stare Down, and for the most part I just like to keep stacking the crits with Sven. So in this phase I don't really have a cauldron. I get the cauldron towards the end. So what I do most of the time is effectively just scan bubbles. You don't want to scan anyone else really, because that's going to give Hero haste and Bubbles haste. And here you need Hero to keep stacking evades on the beacon. Ursula can purge, but if you're able to get, you know, 3 or 4 stacks on the beacon, she's never going to be able to purge, and she's never going to be able to insta-kill. So it's quite an easy phase here really. And now I'm just going to fast forward the footage to the end. It's a little bit slower in this phase. You know, I don't actively use Sven's basic here because I want to stack the crits, so I do take it a little bit slower just to make sure that I get through it, but for the most part there's nothing really to worry about here too much. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. If you've got any questions in the comment section down below, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer them. You can also reach out to me in Discord. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and yeah, I really appreciate you watching. Thanks guys.